them up formally into minutes to send to my colleagues as a reference and for those who weren't in the meeting. Okay, it's a very important skill. Now, mediation has decided that it may not just be for other people, it might be just for you yourself. And note-taking is a great example of how we mediate. In a class, when I'm learning something, I might take notes, not for my colleague, but for me, myself. So I might need access to that information later. So mediation is just more than just giving it to other people, it's about your own access to information. And this has been added, obviously, this is for what we do in schools at a lower level in literature, and what we do at a higher level in literature. Okay? And again, you'll look at these scales, and they'll be from the A1, or even pre-A1, right up in C2. All of these have descriptors. All right. So that's mediating text. Mediating concepts is, again, allowing access to knowledge and concepts that someone does not have access to. Okay, now that's clear in terms of pedagogy. Okay, we do that every day in class, right? It could also be when even, we have, my colleague here is training to be a coach, so she works with our team on coaching sessions, so she's actually mediating concepts to us in our own language, so the knowledge we don't have access to. The CFR sees two main points here. One point is we get people to construct meaning and encourage conceptual talk, okay? But more importantly, what they've done is they've also added descriptive scales, because as we know as teachers, if the class is not listening, no one's learning. So we have to put the groundwork down to ensure there is an environment where the students can learn and listen and talk and express and basically share ideas, elaborate. So here, it's not just about the meaning being constructed and elaborated on, it's about making sure that in group works, when you lead or take part, that there is the groundwork for that facilitation of access of concepts to take place. Okay, and finally, this is interesting, and again, it's one of the questions for us language assessors, how we do this, okay, in assessment. Here, this is not about linguistic, but individual, social, cultural, social linguistic. Now, do you remember I talked about the divorce lawyer here? Well, the British Council does a lot of English for peacekeepers around the world, and we're now working a lot with military around the world so they can join international military groups. I don't know, my friend here works a lot with the Colombian Army. Worrying, but true. Okay, so here it's very much about trying to understand people's views, points, ideas, where we don't have access to that culture, or that we have a completely different view. I think this, he thinks that. So it's understanding that space, conflict resolution, making sure that we calm it down, make sure everyone's points are heard, find common ground. Let me give you some ideas of what that looks like in the actual descriptors. So here, you can read this. I like the bottom one because even at A2, there is a space for us to try and get pluralistic, pluricultural understanding here. Even if it just means asking questions of what do you mean? Why do you use that? Even if it's just that, the idea is we're encouraging people to work in a globalised society with clearly a lot of international, communicators with them. Here, mediating a text at B1, it's quite easy to understand, we do that in class all the time, and mediating concepts. All right. But again, as I said, all those 19 descriptors, well, I gave you about 15, there's also the strategies I haven't got time to talk about, but they all have from the A1, usually from A1, depends, up to C2 descriptors on all those ones we talked about. so task, you're more interested in that. Okay, here's a task from a German high-stakes test. You're a 15, 16-year-old kid doing this. You're a German kid, okay? So what you've got an English friend, magazine about millennials, who we are portraying as lazy and socially inactive, okay? Now, he said there's a German article about someone who's young, social activist. So basically, he's got an English friend, and he's only got basic German, so you write an email and you talk to that person, so you write to that person about this information. So here's the text. So here's the text. Don't worry, it's German, your English isn't bad. Here's a German text, okay? So the German kid reads the German text, and then he writes an email about this person, how she profits from her involvement. But what's really interesting, if anyone reads German, you'll find in this German text, they talk about Ausbildung. Ausbildung means apprenticeships. I don't know, we don't actually have that term in English, really. So, and that's one of the ways it's really, she profited, because then she decided what to do for her Ausbildung. So what it means is not only does this German kid have to write some of the ideas, but they also have to explain some of that cultural concepts so in the text itself. It's quite an interesting task. Here's another one. Okay, here's a really interesting one, because here, again, for German kids, here they're reading in English, but then they're going to write in German. So it's unusual, right? And they're going to read a text by Kevin Rudd, who was the former Prime Minister, apologising to the Indigenous peoples of Australia, and they're going to basically summarise. So this is that processing text. Do you remember? There was relaying specific information, there was graphs, and there was processing. So he's got to understand, the kid or she, the main ideas and summarise it in their own language. Okay, I'm talking about B1, B2. I mean, that's quite a difficult text. It's about high B1 text. Okay, here's another one from a Greek high-stakes test. You've got 5 points. Everyone translates that. You probably get extra point for pronouncing that, actually. Okay, so you've got a description of a singer or an actress. Again, 10 points for pronouncing that. And then basically, you orally tell me about that person. Okay? So you're taking some specific information that you think is relevant. Alright, and then you do that in English. So you're the Greek student, you read your Greek text, and then orally you offer what some sort of ideas around that are. Now, we've been doing this for years as well in our own tests, British Council. IELTS, which is obviously co-owned by British Council, Cambridge and IDP, we've had note-taking in our listening tasks for years. So again, that type of mediation. I think most people know IELTS tests, hopefully. And even in the British Council IELTS test, we've had graphs. Okay? You look at the graph and then you write, was it 150 words or something, isn't it? 100 words? I can't even remember now. Yeah, 150 words, there you go. And in our APTIS test, which is a test designed and developed by the British Council, we have quite an interesting type of mediation between registers. Here, you have a problem. On the one hand, you have to write an informal email to someone of 50 words. And then, in the same task, you have to write to a stranger, customer service. So obviously the language is going to change quite drastically from the actual informal to your mate and formal. Not just the language, the vocabulary, the structure, everything will have to change. So that's mediating inner language, which is your second language. It's very important. I think that's clear. Okay, challenges, the last slide or two. Let me see the timing. Yeah, good timing. Okay, teacher training, mediation. Well, to be honest, I train around the world in the CFR for governments, and most people don't even know the CFR. So how are we going to know about mediation? That's one of the issues, right? Let's get real. Tasks. How do you design tasks, and how do you make sure they're actually doing what you want them to do? That's going to be problematic, especially if there's two languages. In the Austrian test, there are exams where you read a text in one language, write an email in a second, and then in a third, you give a presentation. I'm just wondering what sort of teacher can actually mark that. I'm out. I can't do English. Okay. The other issue I have is it sort of encourages in your own language as well. In some countries in the world, the classes are all in L1. I don't want to encourage or give someone an idea that it's okay to use L1 in those sort of places. And, don't we do this already? And from my side, assessment, well, if it's about choice, how do I assess choice? How do I assess? If you have to add information or reduce information to facilitate access, how do I assess that? And sometimes it is about non-linguistic skills. Some people are good communicators at A2, right? And some people are pretty bad at C1. So here's our stand. The British Council's stand is, which is very controversial, just because something's a good idea, it doesn't mean we have to test it. Okay? We should assess it, introduce it into classrooms, but we don't feel we should be testing mediation. Controversial, we may change our mind, but that's where we stand at the moment. But governments have mandated it in several countries. And finally, the last one, why are we talking about this? Well, first of all, it is an everyday activity. We are doing it in a globalised society. It is in the CFR. CFR is a very influential and very useful document of reference. Okay? Some people say it's the key to assist in employability. It's that key. Yet to be convinced, but they believe it's a key factor, missing link between language and people actually being able to do something in workplace. And then finally, it's a different world today. It's a globalised world. So we have to rethink the way we teach and learn languages. Okay, I think that's my presentation finished. If anyone would like a question, I know it's a little bit late, either we can have one question now or you can come up and ask me questions. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you. Come up and ask. You can come up and ask. Because you've got to do. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Appreciate it.